qu'on est éclairé par notre... Chaud là déjà.
Autre chose?
Oui, commence déjà. Voilà, ça y est, je me donne. Sur leur site anglais, j'ai trouvé Emergency Response. Intervention d'urgence. Alors, les bailleurs institutionnels. Déjà bailleurs, can be donor or lenders. Donors and lenders, en fait.
Les bailleurs institutionnels,
oui, en fait. Alors, je vais te dire qui c'est, je le sais, j'ai noté. Alors, les bailleurs institutionnels, c'est l'UE, l'UNICEF, le gouvernement suédois et AFD.
Alors, fundraisers,
c'est ils doivent leur donner l'argent. Et je ne sais pas si on dit institutional donors.
Donors, institutional donors.
Yes, parce que c'est quand même institutional.
Bailleurs, institutionnel.
Ou backer, ça peut être backer, bailleur aussi.
C'est
funder ou funding agency.
En français.
Or funding agencies.
Ouais, c'est bien ça. Mais c'est bailleur institutionnel en français.
Ben, il y a les deux, il y a des bailleurs en général, il y a des bailleurs institutionnels en particulier.
Et ben si c'est institutionnel, c'est agencies.
So funding agencies, c'est pas mal.
Et si c'est pas, il va en dire autre chose. On va dire
backers.
Donors.
Bonjour.
Oh, shit.
Good morning. For the people who need interpretation, you have headsets here.
Je me demande qui va nous écouter, qui est des étrangers ici.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Dorian Dreux. I'm the General Secretary of Action Against Hunger. The eldest here, the most senior, it's Elvira who usually deals with logistics. I'm not Elvira, but I will do my best to be as efficient as she is. Let me remind you that within the framework of a significant resolution on the modification of the statutes or the articles of association, it's important for us to reach a quorum, so please sign for the list of attendance. We are a bit late, so to catch up, I suggest we now appoint the Bureau, the Select Committee of the General Assembly. We need a president, a secretary, and 2 observers. There's already someone who is interested in ensuring the chairmanship of this meeting, Didier Lebrec. Is there another candidate? I suggest we now vote. Are there abstentions on the appointment of Didier? Is there anybody volunteering to play the role of a secretary for the session? We need 2 secretaries.
Oui, ça je voulais chercher aussi le bureau, je sais pas.
Amongst the members of the board, maybe, who are not leaving or who are not candidates. Nobody is applying. We will not be able to start the General Assembly as long as we don't have these 2 secretaries. So can you take pity on us? Thank you, Amandine and Alice Lambert. 2 observers as well, who will be here when we check the vote, who will attend when we have a look at the ballots. Thank you. Please get to Martin, who will take down the minutes and who will check on the names of the people applying, and also we'll check the minutes. Didier, you have the floor now. So this is an extremely sensitive role I'm playing, because I will just give the floor to different people with a fair minimum for each. So we'll start with a speech of the Chair of Action Against Hunger, and it will be followed by the President's report on the activity of Action Against Hunger. Then we take a 10-minute break and we'll resume our work with the elements that you have on the panel at the entrance of the room. You have the floor. Oh, sorry, there's a request there. The interpreters are sorry, they cannot hear the speaker.
C'est quoi? Je sais pas. Attends, oui, on a l'ordre du jour. On doit avoir l'ordre du jour. Ah, c'est general meeting.
What did I say?
Assemblée. Non, mais c'est sûr qu'il faut faire un effort.
Doesn't matter. We have a joint request, Thierry Molichon, Laurent Bacchus and myself, to correct and add to the agenda. Laurent Bacchus, I'm a previous member of board and a member. So we're turning to the chair of the session so that he takes into account this request to put on the agenda for this morning, amongst the resolution, a new resolution, which was put to the attention of the members of the forum and got 45 signatures, and for which we would like to share for a couple of minutes within the framework of the resolution of this morning. Okay, so maybe I should turn to Dorian. In your point, there are two things: the fact that you need to present what you want exactly, and then whether it can be added to the resolutions. I get Dorian can answer on the second point. Now, on the explanation, I guess this be part of the discussions on resolutions. That's from 11:45 to 12:30. The interpreter couldn't hear. We will check, says Dorian. Well, the topic, as you didn't all, I guess, keep up with what was going on, the topic is twofold. The first one is on the brutal increase of the contribution of members, with 550 members, which triggered many problems for the governance of Action Against Hunger. It's completely legal, but there's a governance problem. And the other topic, which was supported by 35 members, is the communication within the non-profit organization. So the idea is not to create tension, but if we don't speak about this, it's a problem. If we just forget about it, saying this is a normal general meeting, it's not constructive. So we want your opinion on that. We want to discuss this. And if possible, we want to hold a vote on this and see the resolution of the general meeting. Okay, so it is on the agenda for the part at 11:45, and then we'll look at the proposal, I think, but we have to check in the articles. I think that to share on this, there's no problem whatsoever. But now, as for a decision, we need the two-third of the attending people who are voting, so that the decision be adopted. So you have to check this in the articles of the association, in the statutes. I think that information and sharing on this is not problematic, but whether it can actually trigger a decision, I'd like you to check in the statutes. Okay, we'll check this point now. For in principle, I mean, a presentation with the main lines. I think we all agree that we all want to listen to you and understand your point of view. Thomas, you have the floor. J'aime bien le discours du président, il n'y a pas son nom. Can you hear me? Yes, apparently it is working. Dear members, ladies and gentlemen, please forgive me if my voice is shaking a little. but this is an important moment after 8 years within the CA, and I've held almost all positions there, and I've gone through beautiful moments of emotion, and I think that for the people who know me, they know very well that during the missions I met people who were amazing people who inspired me very much and gave me energy, and without whom I wouldn't have been able to work within the CA, because often we deal with strategic issues, macro and micro, and often we forget about the missions, and I always keep in mind this horizon, the people that I don't want to call beneficiaries, but rather populations, the same as myself, with whom I was on a level playing field. That's all that comes to my mind, so sorry for the emotion I might be showing during the speech. My mandate is ending, and I decided that it would end after 3 years. It might be a political mistake. I'm just saying this for the future president, because when you announce when you will leave on the last year, people think, well, you can go on speaking, we know you're leaving, so you lose out in terms of political influence. Nevertheless, I was very happy with what was achieved. I'm not going to take stock of my chairmanship. I'm not going to take stock because you need some hindsight, and I'm not sure I have it yet. And I'm not going to give you a hindsight on what was achieved, because same as when you work in history, you need time. I think that the reforms that I try to carry out will have their impact in the middle and long term. Nevertheless, I don't want to take stock, but I have to say that I am the chair, and I regret this, who is completing his mandate on a pre-General Assembly that was the worst ever known during the last 10 years of action against hunger, and I'm accountable for this, but I regret it very much. The worst of all is that I always worked in full transparency, and I think my commitment was genuine, I was honest, and I think I was humble, and I hope at times even courage. Nevertheless, what's happened in this pre-general meeting is not acceptable. I would even go as far as saying that some of it is unqualifiable. Some have decided to blame this or that person. Some have used a null theory in policy, that is the theory of conspiration. Some went as far as instrumentalizing the volunteers network, which actually impacts our governance. Some even used rumors to such an extent that some have had rumors on their private lives as well, which is completely unacceptable. If the people who are at the origin of these ways, and if amongst them there are candidates, ladies or gentlemen, who opted for these type of tools, I invite them to get back to their senses and take ownership of the principle of accountability. But, of course, this is also a specific general meeting with a change of governance. We've reached a point in terms of enough people of an end of cycle. But not only, this is not only about conquering power positions, even though this is part of the game. But at the end of the day, even though our association, our not-profit organization is going through tough times, this is not to do with one mandate or another. It's because what is at stake is a global vision of our association and of humanitarianism. And I invite you to review the various manifestos that were handed over to you, and which are all very much respectable, but they don't convey the same vision of humanitarianism. On the one hand, humanitarianism that is secular and goes back to the history of Christian charity, which think that we're acting for the population and maybe sometimes we're beside these populations. Another one that thinks that we have to take action together with and through these populations, so that our action is always co-achieved on the ground. A vision that assumes that the headquarters, the bodies, have to retain control over the mission. Another that I wanted to convey for years, that believes that we have to give more and more sufficiency to the missions and act upon a rationale of localization. This doesn't mean that we don't have accountability. Accountability is key, and that's here that we have a headquarters here. Our teams, but also our delegations and our volunteers have a role to play. This is a vision that's quite traditional, but it's not only the vision that we see at ACF. I mean, it is hunger against action against hunger. We see that in other fields in France, whereby there's this issue of having technical control in the north, here in Paris, in Madrid, in New York, in London. Another one that believes that the world has changed, that expertise is shared. We were speaking yesterday of the expertise of the lay people, who is more expert than the one who actually lived through and has his flesh impregnated with these experiences. And the world has changed. You just have to go to India, where I'm just coming back from, or Bangladesh, to see that the university, the academic world, the training world has been completely turned over. And we have people who are very professional, who have great knowledge and have nothing less than we do, and do not have any reason to envy us. This is a vision whereby we assume that we have to preserve at any cost the principle of the law of 1901, the one defining the principles for non-profit organizations, a law that accepts that citizens' commitment be globalized. Suffices to go to the ground and see that on top of this cohort of committed people, you have people in these countries where we intervene. In Bangladesh, there were more than 2,000 volunteers who on a daily basis are supporting our teams in the refugee camps of Rohingya people. And what will be key, I guess, in the debate this afternoon on the number of members, on the idea that there might be qualified members and unqualified members. What is at stake here? Don't fool yourselves. It's a vision that is about staying amongst the elected ones, the selected ones, or a more inclusive vision, which whereby you think that it's high time that in this room, through the networks, there be members from Bangladesh, from Pakistan, from Burkina Faso, who can actually give their vote, so that we don't remain amongst a small group. A vision which thinks that that there is a vision whereby the international network is actually a problem, that it made us lose power, us in France. Another one that thinks that the international network is a strength because that's where you can share on good practices and also on mistakes. You learn from mistakes, but it's also a political power. Will we have been auditioned during the last General Assembly of the UN if we were not a network, if we weren't operating in the main capitals, if we weren't intervening in more than 50 countries? I don't believe this. This international network is a considerable political strength. There's one vision that assumes, and we find this in many players of the community, this is not typical of Action Against Hunger, who think that gender is an accessory issue, a secondary issue, that the gender issues are pointless. And another one which refuses men's domination or any other type of domination. To those who didn't see that this change in paradigm was not only right but also fundamentally necessary, I invite them to change. A vision that is especially enshrined in an organization such as ACF that stresses the need to act in situations of emergency. This is completely respectable, of course. Another one that says that there is a continuum between emergency and long-term projects, and this is become regular because we get more and more such urgent situations, and because it is one of the fundamental expectations of the populations on the ground, and the issue of development is core to the work of ACF, a vision that doesn't put at the heart of its concerns climate change and environmental deterioration. Another one that thinks that it needs to be an absolute priority operationally and politically for the organization. What else could I say? I'm sure there are other breaks that can be identified. I'm not going to set up a list the Prévert way and stop here, but I think that today the choice that you have to make and that you have to reflect upon with full awareness is what Karl Popper, the philosopher, said is a choice between a closed-in society or an opened-up society. And the stake is huge here for our non-profit organization, humanitarianism that is open or that is open up or closed down. Thank you. Véronique, we now invite you to present to us the President's Report. C'est ça, morale et d'activité?
Oui, c'est ce que j'ai trouvé. Vérifie si tu veux, il marche très mal le Wi-Fi. Hein.
Ah bon,
toi, ça marche?
Ouais.
T'es sur...
Ouais, sur tes...
T'es sur Sup?
Oui. Non, je suis sur l'autre.
D'accord.
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you today for this fourth general meeting for myself. And my role is within 20 minutes to present to you in the name of the team of Action Against Hunger the outcome of the work for 2018. So, first message. This was a year without any surprises. but of course, fraught with crisis. We've lost a decade in terms of progress made in fighting against hunger. 821 million people are hunger struck. The multiplicity of drivers in hunger, not only conflicts, climate change, the loss of diversity, inequalities in genders, and underinvestments in social structures. These are key drivers. At the same time, 2018 was also a year of internal crisis for the sector, the Oxfam crisis of PSEA, which questioned the deeper values and the organizational culture of some organizations and of the whole sector, as it is a crisis that struck the whole sector and which made it possible for us to do more and to refocus on our values and how we want to deal with them. An excellent outcome for this year with, on the one hand, and the number of lives that we impacted is huge, more than a third more people that were impacted. That's more than 7 million people that were impacted compared to the 5 million that we had last year. At the same time, innovation is going on within action against hunger, not only technical innovation, but innovation in the ways we work, for instance, in terms of collection or partnership, a lot of work in terms of monetary transfers and also in terms of social protection, innovation in terms of employability, to give you a couple of examples, but also excellent results in terms of finances, which is never an objective, but which is always reassuring to consolidate our structure and our financial reserves. But Alice and our treasurer will tell you about all this.
So we mentioned emergencies. That's not all what we're involved in. For several years now, ACH has been has been working on both emergencies and development, working on the needs and rights of the people. First, let me talk about emergency response. In 2018, we still have 67% of what we do tied to emergency and the rest on long-term development, even though the border between the two is becoming finer. 2018, we had 37 emergencies versus 30 in 2017. 16 moves, emergency poles that work together as a network. There's also a new strategy for emergency response at ACH we rolled out last year, and we are already seeing results. Already saw results in 2018. In line with what Thomas said, it's an in-depth transformation of how we work on emergencies. It's doing humanitarian work differently. We invested much more on preparation and not just response. And we invested more on reinforcing the local capacity of local players, and we worked more with local players. A big problem has been access. Humanitarian access has been the main problem, as well as security and safety. We are seeing a reduction in humanitarian space, which is quite worrisome in all the regions we work in. This means that increasingly we work through local partners because of this issue with humanitarian access in particular. About safety issues, 286 safety problems we faced during the year, similar to the previous year. So we rolled out a new safety policy and invested more in training, safety and security training in hostile environments for hostile concerns. We trained 1,694 people versus 440 the previous year, so big investment. Also, the ACH network joined the Disaster Emergency Committee, which is a humanitarian platform that coordinates emergency response with greater efficiency closer to the people and the media. So we joined DEC UK and Canada 1 year after DEC France and Spain. We also worked on prospection to see if there are other countries where our action would be useful. Countries where we don't have any presence. We did this in 7 locations in Iran and Libya, among others. Last year, I spoke of the Rohingya crisis still going on. This year, I'd like to talk about Yemen. I traveled there in January. More than 80% of the population is in need, in acute need for humanitarian aid. Huge needs. ACH covered the needs of 725,000 people, which is a lot. This is a country which has had peaks in conflicts this year and also cholera on the rise. We have an integrated response approach to this crisis, especially in terms of humanitarian advocacy. We campaigned against the sale of weapons to Saudi Arabia as part of the campaign, and it's useful to point out that there have been non-traditional alliances put in place. We, for instance, working with Disclose, a new emerging NGO media, and alliances with dockers, trade unions or syndicates in French ports. It's very important to work in partnership. We also worked with parliamentarians, members of parliament, and we worked on setting up a committee, parliamentary committee on the sale of arms, weapons. It's very important. It's acknowledged by most players that the data battle was prevented thanks to the alert work done by NGOs and first and foremost ACH. And there's the fragile peace process with the Stockholm Agreement. It's making things very complex on the ground. We had to relocate our teams from Odessa, like many NGOs, to Sanaa for more than 6 months. We can bring them back to Odessa. We lost one of our employees in January, Anna. And it's complex also because of the north-south divide, because of suspicions of misuse of aid, and there are also long visa times, checkpoints, a big HR gap, safety and security, of course, and access, preventing humanitarian access. So it's very hard for us to work and monitor our work. At the beginning, I said we reached out to more than 7 million people in 2018, up 34% versus 2017. Alone, this may not mean much, but it is important to point it out to see how great our presence and impact are. About the network, and we mentioned the strength of the network, we're talking about 21 million people versus 20 million in 2017. In France, it's 1/3 more year on year, and 5% more for the network. About our sectors, all the sectors have grown, whether health and nutrition, wash, or food security and livelihoods. Mental health have suffered because their efforts have been focused on research. I'll talk about that about FUSAM in Nepal in a moment, also because of Ethiopia. and we had a lot of work at the time on mental health and health practices. We hope this will be able to go back up this year. For the sectors, a few examples. If you look at nutrition and health, two examples. We're working on advocacy with the WHO to have an integrated approach to health, not in silos. We want nutrition to be included in a horizontal, comprehensive health approach. This is what we do in 80% of our nutrition and health programs. Similarly, everything we talk CMAM, so it's the community management of acute nutrition has a recovery rate of 84%. WASH, big effort on training with for local agreements with great universities. Food security and livelihoods. There was a reduction by 80% of food distribution. More and more we're working with the monetary transfers and social protection, so cash is up. Mental health and health practices. FUSAM research in Nepal covers reinforcement of severe acute malnutrition treatment by educating mothers to better stimulate children in addition to to better nutrition, which has a positive impact on the children's development. In terms of advocacy and research, a lot was done in 2018 about hunger and conflicts, for instance. This is very, very important. Out of the 113 million people in acute food insecurity, 74 million are in countries affected by conflicts. 65%. So ACH worked with others to obtain a resolution from the UN Security Council 2417. Was the resolution 317 was approved in May, and we attended the meeting, the general meeting of the UN, to explain how we think the resolution should be implemented. It's not enough to have the resolution, and it has to be put into practice. There was also the Paris Peace Forum in November 2018 in Paris, combined with communications work on Stop Hunger Crime, with plates or forks made from weapons. We also worked in Sahel, which is a priority for the French government and society. In terms of 3D, development, defense, and diplomacy, with the security policy. I was in Chad recently, and we saw the Barkhane force there. It was quite striking. There was an event at the National Assembly in France inviting deputies from Mali, Mauritania, and Burkina Faso, and with the regional office of ACH in Dakar, which were expert witnesses for French deputies. There was also a joint report on Sahel with Oxfam and Save the Children. These are just examples of the strength of advocacy on the rise at ACH. Research, 25 research projects were conducted, 85% with a nutrition component. Subsidies. A growing share of institutional subsidies, 75% up, and also the donor relation unit was strengthened this year on 2018, and we're seeing results. And our missions and pools worked on that. The main source of public donation is the EU. DEFCO is longer development, and ECO is more emergency response. A second partner is the UN, and we received more from CEDA and AFG, and we work on diversifying our donors, including Germany, which is going to play a greater role in the post-Brexit context. Activity volume. Our budget, 189.5 million euro budget for France, and 424 million for the network. Both are up 7% for our social missions versus 2017. And the swap with the US was finalized, and we closed Zimbabwe and Indonesia, among others, and opened up France and Libya missions. We'll see results this year. Of fund collection, 45 million euros, equivalent to 2017. I'll tell you more in a moment. Partnerships. We mentioned the localization context and the change theory based on 4 pillars at ACH. One is the transfer of knowledge, so indirect operational work. 60% of partnerships are local and national levels, 40% with governments, local and national authorities, and 22% with civil society organizations. The network aims for 20% in our international strategic plan for funds that should be channeled through civil society organizations locally and nationally. The question of gender equity. 59% of people we support are women and girls. This year we strengthened the gender unit in the network. We want to continue to reinforce this unit, which provides important work for our country offices and programs. So 48% of the countries have action plans to achieve minimum gender standards, and 43 countries receive training on gender equity. We address gender internally, externally. Internally, let me mention the example of Chad, where in terms of HR policies, there were investments in training and awareness raising action for HR people to promote to foster promoting women to responsible positions of responsibility. There are more and more programs with a gender aspect, such as Bangladesh, but it's the case in most countries where most Rohingya refugees are women and children. It's also the most vulnerable populations and the main recipients of aid. So this has given more work, psychosocial stress, and disrupts gender roles. So ACH launched a program to reinforce knowledge and train men as to stimulation of children under 5, and focus discussion groups with men to discuss practices. Results have been positive. Fathers have been more involved. There's been less work for women, and the health indicators of children have gone up. Societal and environmental responsibility. ACH, and if we put climate change and loss of biodiversity at the heart of our next strategic plan, we're going to be working on this for a week during the international seminar starting tomorrow. So it'll be even more. What does ACH do? What would you like to do? Here's a few examples. You're seeing a few pages of the remarkable work done by infrastructure logistics team on the ground and at the head office. This is bases that are getting powered 100% by solar energy. That's more and more the case. In Afghanistan, Congo, Nigeria, Bangladesh. So the bases and the health centers are being powered by solar energy. We're also working on recycling at the head office to replace plastic cups at last by recyclable cups, refillable cups, and a challenge on eco-responsibility with an agreement with the Ministry of Sports. These are examples of different initiatives on the ground at that offices for social and environmental responsibility. We have to come up with a real strategy, a real approach. So for 2 months now, we've been working with an outside firm to define a materiality matrix to define priorities and investments. We have also opened talks with some of our suppliers because our purchasing policy has been revised to include a more robust environmental clause. One of our main suppliers, we've been talking to ensure the palm oil used is 100% responsible and certified. We also discussed packaging. RSO highlights and major programs for people who were here last year and the previous year. It's along the same lines. And implementation, because it's good to have programs, but you have to roll them out. First of all, oui, mais en anglais, il n'y a pas un acronyme. We approved an action plan for 2018 to 2020 to take action against sexual violence. We also adopted a common policy throughout the network, and there have been awareness raising campaigns on the ground at the head offices. You need to know the policy, understand it, and see what it means concretely. This action plan includes strengthening of alert and reporting mechanisms, and including investigation by the core humanitarian standards. And there's also a budget for investigations when serious cases arise. We finalized the US swap, so we focus on geopolitical regions. An important point in terms of our business model, the approval of setting up a wholly owned subsidiary to sell knowledge and technical assistance services. This will make a big difference for us, and we'll tell you more next year. We're going to be starting out this year. And we'll continue to invest in digitalization with a main project called Unify for financial management. Also, the pooling of information system, in particular Link, which is our logistics supply chain one with some NGOs like HI here and MedAir. I'm talking about this because this is an example, this trend to pooling, but it's a tree in front of a forest we're heading towards, especially for medium-sized or small NGOs. We can't continue to create things on our own. So with sister organizations, like-minded organizations, we are working together. And we do this with a network also. We have a sharing agreement for emergency pools, information systems, and logistics with the US, for instance. We are taking action for migrants and vulnerable people in France. program is currently being defined and we'll be working on it this year, get to work on it this year. About the strategic plan, we're starting to prepare the next strategic plan for the coming years. And last year, we assessed the current strategic plan and the and we assessed whether ACH was complying with the core humanitarian standard. And the conclusions will be taken into account for the next strategic plan. Communications and development. It wasn't an easy year for collection. You saw a gross collection is stable, which is actually quite a feat, and I want to pay tribute to employees. France Générosité announced minus 4.2% in France, and for some of our colleagues, it was worse. We had a tax go up, tax taken away, and crisis in the fall, and still we managed to keep collection at the same level. Well done. And then there's also collection from companies that's up. Digital collection is up as well, and that's a strong trend. Innovation. We are starting to explore collection in countries like Ivory Coast and Bangladesh, and new forms of new ways to mobilize donors, especially online, on social media, like Facebook, that shows ACH as one of 4 NGOs to test a new system with. And also, Hugo Clément raised funds for the DRC. And this is a way to mobilize young people. RDC, c'est DRC. About mobilization, stop hunger crime. With this dish campaign you all heard of, it was symbolic and original, and a strong visual message with these knives and forks made from weapons. QHR, 4,200 employees, split, the way you can see on screen, 3,902 on the ground, 88% are national staff, and we're continuing to hire more and more national staff. The borders are closing down, and it's harder to hire some profiles in some countries. This is something we saw in India, Bangladesh, and Nepal in the past, but now it's everywhere. Yemen, Chad, DRC, everywhere. This is a big trend. It's here to stay. And so we are adapting and nationalizing staffing. So we have to get ready. Delegations, 34. Delegations play a major role for ACH in terms of visibility, awareness raising, advocacy, and collection. Fundraising, more than 2 million euros collected in 2018 thanks to the local delegation. Also, awareness raising through sports, 150 sports events and 10 sports partnerships. Also, the delegation represents some of our institutional events like the race and the enjoying against hunger. Well done. Last but not least, the international network. Like every year, it published its global performance report, which consolidates all actions of the network. Three items I'd like to point out: the revision and signing of new international cooperation protocols, opening up to the global south with India, that is a member of Network since 2017. The idea is to go beyond that and add more countries, such as perhaps Kenya or others. It's very important in this localization context. It's also a reassertment of our humanitarian principles. We confirmed ACH as an international organization for humanitarian and development work. And we included components that were absent, such as gender equality, environment protection, and risk management. International functions were reinforced. We mentioned the gender unit and the donor relationship unit, and we further invested in the unit in charge of assessment, accountability, and training, so we can consolidate in the network the impact and results of our programs.
Now for CHS and for the assessment of core humanitarian data and CSB2. I've already spoken about this, so I think I'll stop here. I'll take questions, of course, if you have any. I just would like to conclude by saying a big thanks to the teams. Well done. We have the representatives here. We have delegations. I see different departments also represented here. Who are here at executive level. I'm very proud because all this wouldn't have been able without a dedicated CA. I'd like to pay tribute to Thomas and Dorian, who organized some work of exceptional quality at the level of the PSA prices. I'd like to pay tribute to all of them, as well as to the network. Without them, this wouldn't have been possible.
Conseil d'administration.
Close so that I can click. Thank you very much, Véronique. It was very clear, very long, very specific, and I hope it gave you reasons to go on getting involved and committing yourself. Before taking a break, we can have a Q&A on what Véronique just presented to you, or not? Yes? Please speak in the mic. Please speak in a mic. The interpreters cannot interpret if you don't have a mic. Well, the interpreters couldn't hear the question, but the answer is this project that we call solidarity-based economy. We've decided on something that focuses on knowledge product trading and technical assistance. We're going to focus on sectorization in the financial field, and we'll speak about this later on when presenting the financial report. This hasn't had an impact onto 2018 yet, but it will in 2019. And at the same time, we'll create a SASU, that is the legal form of this entity, of this subsidiary, which will be set up in 2019. It could have been interesting for the members to be kept up to date of the changes. This is a decision that, and maybe we could have been informed before the general meeting in an ongoing manner, because I saw the series of significant events that took place in 2018, but the members only find out about this during the General Assemblies, General Meetings. I mean, it would be good to have a system that would enable us to be updated as these strategic decisions are taken. Yes, the conversation went on and off during the year at board level, and then the sharing of information with the members is done through the traditional mechanisms, but maybe it wasn't communicated upon enough. The interpreters couldn't hear the comment of the gentleman in the audience. Maybe a couple of pieces of information on the France mission. Well, I'll give the floor to Isabelle or Pascal, who were leading with Valérie Senon, leading this project. As far as I know, we started to meet the various partners who have been dealing with vulnerable populations over the past years, and our approach is about food safety. It's core to our DNA, so we met with doctors of the world and other organizations to see the complementarity of what we could do compared to what's already being achieved. Isabelle de Serre-Carensen, I'm head of operations, indeed. Good morning. The project France Mission, well, that's its name for the moment, has been set up at the beginning of the year following a seminar with the board during which a decision was taken to move on to such projects. Our teams of the pool who deal of Western Africa and Southern Africa, they've been dealing on this with this topic and set up a map of the situation with the situation specifically in Paris, but also with contacts in the regions. The idea is to complete activities that are already existing and not to just turn up and create parallel projects or overlapping projects. So this process of taking stock of the situation, of asking questions and discussing with all the partners is being finalized, and the people who are in charge of the project in my department are setting up possible scenarios for the positioning that action against hunger can take. We hope, with Pascal, we're leading this project together, and with the teams from advocacy and from operations, we aim by the end of June, beginning of July, to have set up a certain number of scenarios to offer some joint actions with the people already working in Paris. That's where we are at. We'll keep you updated on the rest of the developments. I don't come for the humanitarian sector. I come from the social action sector, but I'm interested in your work, and I see almost a complete break between the social action and environmental action, which is confirmed. I mean, in all the players that you mentioned, I didn't hear you mention any social protection actor. I work in the field of children's protection. We support underage people, and in the names that you quoted, there's no association that is supporting the social part, the social aspects for minors, from migrant minors. So we lack interlocutors, and I think it would be wishable to set up linked. I mean, we're not that numerous working in the field of social protection, but that's what we're wondering about because you have institutional support or care, and then you end up in the street, and then it's humanitarian organizations that are looking after you. To give you a very simple example, the cinema department refuses almost 100% of the contracts for the training of young minors. So we have isolated young minors and we tell them, yes, well, you can set up your home on the pavement next door. So we are trying to organize things, but we don't have the means and we don't get any answers from humanitarian organizations. So I'm holding my hand out to you to see how we could work together because for the moment this partition between the two worlds is no good for the target population. Well, I have an example of partnership internally and externally, but you're perfectly right. MSF, Doctors of the World, well, it took 2 years to set up their program. We've had a decision of the board, which was very strong, to turn to deal with the populations from migrants. We are meeting. That's the stage we're at. We are meeting with institutional, private, and public partners. I'm thinking of the COMET, for instance, which is dealing with isolated minors and sometimes is in conflict with the departments and with the social action departments. And we're also meeting some institutional public partners, such as the Town Hall of Paris. And this is the reason why we don't want to define a priori such a project. We want to have a broader vision of the partners. We have some avenues of the scenario on the scenarios. Well, are we going to focus on isolated minors or rather on women? We don't know. This is a question that is being asked at the moment, but the idea is not to work with public players. Nevertheless, I think that civil society has a specific place in terms of public action. Mike, please. Mike, who are you speaking of? Well, all the associations for childhood protection or associations working in the field of social protection, they well, I mean, the Town Hall of Paris doesn't host the minors from migrants. What is your association? Espoir CFDG, Hope CFDG. I mean, you're speaking of those who are commissioning, but not the players. You have sometimes public institutions that, or public action that is taken, but that's a minority phenomenon compared to associations and their work. Well, we can't say that doctors without frontiers don't do any social action. I mean, they host and accommodate some minors because they have minors who are not declared as such. Yes, but that's a huge problem. I mean, we can launch a whole debate on who can be considered to be a minor and who's not. But we'll discuss this. But this is a very tricky issue, very sensitive issue, the issue of underage people. We'll take another 2 questions. Robert Sebac, I'm a board member. Véronique, I was very happy to see this RSO term, that's social responsibility of the organizations, but I think it shouldn't remain only with environmental issues, we have to include sexual minorities, disabled people, religious minorities, all disadvantaged people. That's about what societal responsibility is for organization. I think this is a part of the criteria that will be required when being allocated funding. I mean, you mentioned RSO, but I think that all the points I mentioned are also part of the societal responsibility. Yes, environmental, social, and governance are part of this. In governance, we include issues of transparency, accountability, a whole series of elements which are related to ethics. Then you have society-related issues. We're getting in touch with organizations which put in touch some organizations with migrant workers, and more specifically the environmental part is the weak point of our approach. I think that's why I focused on the weak spot. Sorry. Good morning. Good morning. I work for Action for Hunger. I'm working on care and protection. I just wanted to get back to the issue of the subsidiary. I'd like to understand better the idea that underpins this subsidiary and having people pay for technical services. What is it exactly about? And also relate this to the fact that within the network we are having more and more services that need to be paid for. So what are the stakes for this? I'd like to know the ins and outs of this for an NGO. So you're asking two questions. One is fee for service. Sorry for this jargon, but that's our jargon in the networks, which means that when services are allocated to members within the same networks, we work on recovering costs, which is what we call an interco mechanism with sub-agreements, contracts, whereby we determine that we allocate this service at this state with such and such quality standards, and in return you pay. Well, sorry, but in France, for instance, which is the biggest member in terms of capacity in the network, we wouldn't recover our costs. And to my knowledge, most networks work like this. What we just did is put things in order, because we were doing this on an ad hoc basis until now. Now it's systematical. For instance, in the United States, if we need or if we get some support in terms of HR, it's legitimate that we give them an amount for this service that is lent to us, that is provided to us. Now, for external networks, well, the rationale that supports all this is that on the one hand, the changes in the environment of fundraisers or donors, if we take for instance British Corporation or Swedish Corporation, or also our first donor, institutional donor, who is the European Commission, they now start working with commercial contracts and calls to tender. So they support, for instance, some districts which requires the provision of services in terms of food security. So France wishes also to broaden the type of answers of instruments that our current institutional funding agencies can require. This is in order not to have only one means of intervention and to still focus on our traditional expertise, but the number of instruments is getting greater and greater and integrates some commercial contracts for the trades available at Action Against Hunger. We have other players who can apply, but ACF also wants to apply. We know that we represent some added value, that we have some know-how, and that we should be able to answer such calls to tender. And also, there are some knowledge outcome produced by ADEP or some tools for diagnostics which were invented and promoted by ACF or by ADEP and the research service, which are important. They make a difference and they mean that our intervention on the ground is a quality intervention. What is important is to have this, to make sure this remains open to other players, funding agencies or others. We think that in some cases, in a targeted manner, we can recover our costs, which is why we want to set up this subsidiary. Being an association of 1901 in France, this means that the revenues, the maximum revenues we can get for such services provided is 60,000 euros, which is impossible for an organization of the size of ACF. So what we wanted is to free this structure. So the idea is to preserve the core of our trade, the core of our action, but resorting to different tools and instruments. I don't know whether I clarified or not. Well, we're going to have to take a break now. You can go on discussing this around a coffee, and after that we'll need another 2 hours to see the financial report, the report of external auditors, and also the point that was mentioned this morning. So you have a 10-minute break, please.
Ils auraient dû nous donner ce PowerPoint parce que moi je démarre complètement, j'ai pas l'habitude de. Alors wash c'est wash, j'ai trouvé.
Alors en fait ils disent pas RCO partout, ils disent corporate social
responsibility. En fait c'est RSE parce que moi j'ai entendu RSO et je comprenais pas.
Oui c'est RSO parce que c'est organisation.
Ah d'accord.
C'est ça, c'est pas c'est responsabilité sociétale des organisations. Tu vois? Et du coup ils mettent corporate, but it's not corporate because it's for humanitarian.
Ah, t'as trouvé ça? C'est pour ça que je connaissais pas, tu vois, moi, je connais pas.
C'est responsabilité sociétale des organisations.
Mais en anglais?
Il n'y a pas, parce que partout ils te mettent corporate.
Oui, mais on n'a qu'à dire. On n'a qu'à dire